need to push it down. Okay. Thank you. We're trying to be extra careful on sound this time. We had a little problems before. I think Representative McGuire is just suggesting we might be able to use it to spread it more evenly in front of the reps that are here. All right, terrific. Before we begin, I'm going to ask Representative McDonald to take attendance, and this committee doesn't meet very frequently, and we haven't met recently, so this is also a way for us to all say good morning to each other by remembering who we all are. Representative McDonald, if you could take the roll call for attendance.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Bergeron. Representative Berry. Representative Shurtleff for Representative Cody. Representative Griffin.
Here.
Representative Lane. Representative Kennedy for Representative Lynn.
Here.
Representative McDonald is here. Representative McGuire.
Here.
Representative O'Hara.
Here.
Representative Piedra. Here. Representative Marjorie Smith. Representative Stephen Smith.
Here.
Representative Turcott. Representative Porter for Representative Weber.
Here.
And Representative Wilhelm. All present, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much for doing that. The first item that is going to be mentioned is that since we met, the census data has been released. I think when we met, we anticipated it was going to be released on a Monday. It was actually released the Thursday before. That information has been put on the New Hampshire website, the New Hampshire government website. If you go to the Committee on Redistricting site through the House of Representatives, there is a icon for census data. If you click on that, it takes you to another link. Nothing is simple no matter what they tell you. And you click on that, and that will take you to the OSI government web page, which has the census data. That census data there is compiled with county numbers and community numbers. And we're going to talk a little bit later about those numbers. But if you're interested in seeing those numbers, that's where you should go to see them. If you try to do it through the census webpage, quite frankly, it's an exercise in frustration. And when they have multiple videos to tell you how to use their own webpage, you know you're in trouble. So I would suggest that you go to the website through our website, or the location through our website, to take a look at it. In regards to the numbers that are on there, committee members have been provided with this morning and an email sent late last night. I apologize to committee members. The county population data that has been released. This is important for this committee because our work is really focused on the county breakout of population, and it shows this is to allocate the number of representatives of 400 per population, which works out to 3,443.8225 as to persons per rep. And I expect that we're going to have some discussion on rounding because this is actually a math exercise. And you're going to see, I think, when we go through data that the math matters. So what you have in front of you is the 2020 county population, which works out to our state total of 1,377,529. And as a percentage of the state population, not a surprise, Hillsborough is the largest, and the smallest for population is Coos. There is also a column on the county on as to that the committee is looking at as to what would be the perfect allocation. That is the 3,443.82250 persons per rep and what that would work out to be. Then there is a rounded number on the committee worksheet, and that totals the 400 representatives, which works out to an allocation, for example, of Hillsborough of 123 and Coas, again, the lowest county, of 9 reps. And just for a minute, Representative Ross, you're sort of a math person, and I know that you have done some rounding work. Can you take a quick look at this and tell me sort of how many decimal points it's been rounded to? Yeah, press the button. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
So it's taken out on the sheet, it's taken out to 10 decimal points. And it uses strict rounding. So, 1.49 is not 2, 1.49 is 1. So I took it out to the point where it was insignificant for the purposes of rounding. Actually, it's well beyond that. I think I only needed to go out, I think 4 or 5 in some cases. But it's to show all the math, so it's as transparent as possible.
And the last column on the sheet that we're reviewing compares the rounded allocation to what is currently the location. And again, this is math and for purposes of discussion. Later, it shows that Cheshire, Coas, and Grafton would be losing a rep under the current allocation, and Hillsborough, Rockingham, and Stratford would be gaining a rep. And that is somewhat consistent with what you've heard publicly in articles that I've seen published, is that the population seems to have shifted south and to the east. So those numbers are available on the court, on the government website. Yeah, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I on?
Press red or blue.
How's that? Well, let me speak up. I wish my grandson were here because he knows all that, man. I know. But I'm looking at Cheshire. No, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Hills. Let me skip and I'll come back when I have the question more organized.
All right, we're going to come back to this later. I wanted to lay this out because, of course, the foundation for anything we do is numbers. And anything we do has to do with maps. And we have with us this morning Joel Anderson. Joel Anderson is a former 30-some-odd-year employee. He retired earlier this year. Thank you for joining us, Joel. Joel worked with the House 10 years ago in developing the software that was used for the mapping program. And Joel came in last month to do a demonstration here as to the software, as to how it would work. And the decision has been made for us to proceed with using this software, which allows us to deal with the floaterial issue that's provided for in our Constitution and that we need to do. It uses the same method of math as a component method as compared to another method that had been used a couple of decades ago and can't be used anymore. And I want to thank Joel for agreeing to come back as a part-time employee. Supposed to be part-time. I don't know that it's been part-time the last few days of the general court. And he is here to give us a demonstration. And we are also going to talk about these thumb drives that you all have at the end of the presentation. So welcome, Joel.
glad to be here. And looking forward to serving the committee and helping them with this mapping tool that you could use to draw maps that you can use. Oh, question? Oh, okay.
I'm not sure it's there for amplification. Do you have the red button
Yeah.
pressed?
Yeah, I do. And if it
That's
becomes
much
a problem,
better, actually.
okay, there we go. Let's give that a try. You've already heard a little history
Joel,
on.
let me interrupt you. I'm going to request that the doors not be blocked. There's plenty of room on the other side of the room for people to stand if they want to take pictures. There is a tripod with the camera set up in front of one half of the door, so I'm going to ask the gentleman in front of the other half to please move. I want the entrances to the room kept open. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Proceed.
No problem, no problem. So just a quick history on this software. It was developed by me 10 years ago because we didn't have any software at the time to do our mapping. There weren't any commercial products available that New Hampshire could use because of the fact that we have Floaterials, and that's a rare thing, maybe not used by any other state. I think there may be a few localities that use it now and then, but anyway, in terms of commercial software, it wasn't available. So I decided, I thought that I might be able to develop some software that could do it for us. And so I did some preliminary work on it. It looked like it would work. And so I went ahead and developed the whole thing. I am not a professional programmer, just so you all know. I just kind of picked it up on myself, on my own. And so I do well enough, but there are a lot of technicalities that I may not be that knowledgeable about. So why don't we go ahead and start up the software so that you can see it. I should be sharing my screen here. Looks like the host disabled participant screen sharing message. Getting that? Ryan here. Okay. Okay. Well, let's see. I can't share my screen right now via Zoom. So I can just, do you want me to just go ahead and start? Okay, this is the oh.
I just have a question.
Great question. So everybody hates Fliterials, but they're a mathematical necessity to comply with the federal one man, one vote rule, where we have to have districts as close to perfect population as we can get. But New Hampshire being unique that we have so many little pieces to put together and we can't cross county lines, it isn't always possible to put towns together for multi-seat districts that are perfect. So the overage goes into the Fliterials, there's just no other way to do it here to get it all to work out so that people are equally represented.
Actually, the Constitution.
To tell you a couple of things about the software in the meantime. One is there was some discussion, I think, or you were both of you were speaking about the number of what the ideal population is for a representative. And that number of 3,443.8 something, whatever. So just so you know that this software uses that fractional number, so it uses the exact amount. It doesn't do any rounding in it. So in terms of doing all the computations, so that makes a minor difference, when you do the computations, if instead of using a whole number. And the reason for that is basically, in statistics generally, it's I think it's good if you're going to do any rounding to do the rounding at the end of all your computations rather than do some kind of rounding in the middle of your computations. So that's why the software works. It uses the exact number for ideal population. The software also, in terms of what's considered contiguous, and that's a requirement of the Constitution. You're going to put two towns together, they have to be contiguous. For purposes of this software, and it can be changed, but the way it's set up is that two towns that come together at a point are considered contiguous. And last year's map, or the current redistricting, we use that in one place in Stratford County. There are two towns that come together at a point, and they were made into a district. Things to keep in mind. That can be changed also, but that's the way it works. Oh, so it's working now? Okay, I don't have to do anything. Sorry, that's great.
While Joe's clicking, I'm reminded that the live stream needs us to be pressing the button and to be closer to the mic when we speak. So help me out, everybody, when we do. Speak. So this is when you start up the software, and I should say this what you're seeing here is the so I tried to get rid of myself there. We're supposedly being good with software. I'm showing my ineptitude here. It's still there. Well, anyway. There we go. Excellent. Okay. So
Can you enlarge that?
Okay. First off, I just want to say that what you're seeing here is basically the setup that the software as it looked 10 years ago. And when you there's just a couple of minor changes. The software that you have that you'll be loading on will look just a slightly different than this in terms of the buttons at the very top, and just other minor changes. But for the most part, when you load it up, it's going to look like this. Okay, so this is when you start up the software, the first thing you get is a cover page, and you'll see it says house redistricting. Let's see this. So it says house redistricting. You can type in this area whatever you'd like to. It's your plan. So you could type, if you want to put any notes or whatever concerning your plan, you can type it in here and it will be saved. So there's a series of tabs going along. I don't know if you can see my cursor well enough, but there are a series of tabs for all the county names that go across. So if I'm going to go just to Sullivan County, and so this brings up the map of Sullivan, and I'm just going to go through with how you go about making a district and how you do a map. Just going to take a look at Claremont down here. Claremont, you see, has 3 different wards. They're all about the same size, and for back in 2010, the ideal population was 3,291. And so you can see each one of these wards is large enough to have its own seat. So we can go ahead and start creating districts by clicking on the label and say create a district. So this software is all basically label based in terms of how you operate it. So you click on a label, you're given options as to what you can do at that point. Sometimes it restricts what you can do because I can't, like, say, decide that I want to put Plainfield with Claremont because they're not contiguous. So, like, it won't allow you to put non-contiguous towns together into a district. So it has certain rules like that. So here we have Ward 3 that we put into a district. The label here, it's probably pretty small. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it says it's labeled as District 1. It has 1 seat. It tells you what the population of the town is. And I should have said that earlier on. All of these labels, these town labels, tell you what the population of the town is. This is 2010 numbers. And so you're given this information from the label. This is now a district label. It's bordered in gold, so that means it's a district label. It's colored in Claremont Ward 3, in blue, so that's a district. And then also down below it'll show you 2 other numbers. It says the overall population of Ward 3 is 4,267. This numbered below it, 976, means those are that if you took 4,267 and subtracted off the ideal population of 3,291, you would get this number 976. That basically tells you that's how many people aren't really being represented in that ward. And so you need to add, this district needs more representation, basically. 1 seat doesn't do it. Okay, you got to get more of that. So, and then after that, you'll get a percent deviation, 29.6%. And that's the deviation that you're going to be working with. That's the primary number that you're always going to look at and see whether or not it's a deviation that's acceptable. In the past, we've used plus or minus 5%. Basically, the courts, my understanding is, have said that's an acceptable deviation to stay within. If you go outside of that, then you're going to have to answer why you went outside of that. to the courts. So, so you can, so basically you're trying to stay plus or minus 5%. So we're at 29.6% right now. So we're going to have to do something else with Ward 3. I'm going to go ahead and work with the other wards in Claremont. You'll see that they all have similar populations. In Claremont redid their ward lines so that their wards would be basically have the same population. That's what cities generally do, after the census numbers come out. So we're expecting that many cities will be redrawing ward lines in the next few months. So, excuse me. So I'm going to turn Ward 1 into a district. You can see I have an option. I can create a district, or I could join Ward 1 with Ward 3 into one district. But I'm not doing that. I'm just creating another district. You'll see similar numbers here for Ward 1 because its population is similar to Ward 3. I'm going to make Ward 2 into a district. So now we have 3 districts in Claremont. They all are in need of more representation. In New Hampshire, we have Floaterials to take care of that. And so we'll just form them into one Floaterial. Floaterial is just, and you're probably familiar with this, Floaterial is just composed of underlying regular districts that are all combined together. And this sort of Floaterial is kind of an overlay district. So we'll make a Floaterial here. So I can create a Floaterial. This black label here is the Floaterial label. It's given a district number. It has 1 seat. And then it has a number here that gives you the total population of the Floaterial now. And actually its population right now is the same as Ward 3. So what it will do is total up the total population within the Floaterial. That's what that number will tell you. The number below that, you don't need to worry about that one too much. It's just kind of it's a number you can kind of look at to see, well, how many more districts can I put in that will fit within the Floaterial by in terms of how much more population those other districts need. So you got 2,315 more extra population folks that can go into that district. So I'm going to take Ward 1 and join that in with the new Floaterial. So I have an option of joining the float. That's what I'm going to do, join the float. This software, just so you know, if you try and go ahead and say create another district someplace up here like in Cornish, it won't let you do that because Floaterials always have to have more than one member district underlying it. So it's going to say next thing you have to do is you have to add a district to the Floaterial. So I'm adding Ward 1. I'm going to join that. And I'm going to join in Ward 2. I'm going to join that float. Okay. So now then you can rearrange these labels however you want it. You can move them around wherever you need to move them. Sometimes they get on top of each other, so you can just move them so you can see things well. So now what you'll see is that if you look at the deviations that show, they're going to show only in the regular districts. You don't get a deviation for the entire Floaterial. You get it for each one of the separate districts. And that's kind of part of the component method. That's where that's the level at which the deviations are calculated. And basically that 1 seat in the Floaterial has been divided out amongst the 3 underlying districts based upon the population of each one of those districts. So, and now you'll see that you look at the deviation of Ward 1, 2, and 3, they're all within that 5%. 2 of them are above it, Ward 2 and Ward 1, and Ward 3 is below it, negative 1.7%. So basically, if you see a deviation that's over over 0, it's a positive number. That means basically it could actually use a few more, a little bit more representation, but it's sort of hard to give just a little bit more, once you get that close. But you're within a reasonable deviation, so that's where you stop. A ward like Ward 3, that's a negative number, that means it got a little bit more representation than it needed, but that's okay because it's within that 5%. So there you go. That's basically how you go about making districts and materials. And what I can do, I could just also fill in the rest. What I'm planning on doing is filling in the rest of Sullivan County with actually what the present map is for Sullivan County. So you can just see how different districts can go together in different sizes and number, and how they can go together in Floaterials. I see a question.
Thank you for taking my question. So again, in my ignorance, Claremont is a city and has wards. Are we required to acknowledge those wards when we redistrict? One. And number two, if there weren't enough people for the Floterial amongst those 3 wards, would we be able to pull people from a surrounding town to make up the number?
Yeah, in terms of the,
And one last thing, when I'm getting a message from someone who's watching on YouTube and they cannot hear on YouTube, and they cannot see map, they can on the browser, but they can't.
Showing this on YouTube was not, did not make it on the list of priorities, so I'm not sure that it is occurring. We wanted to make sure the committee and that it was viewable here. And again, I'm asking everybody to try and speak a little louder. Joel, I don't know that you can pull the microphone any closer than it is, so.
I'll eat it if need be. I'll take it. Okay. All right. So, so in terms of the question,
So the question is as to recognition of wards, if you want to take that, and the ability to add other places to cities.
right? Just okay. Yeah. So in terms of yeah, I mean the wards of a city are recognized, you know, I think pretty much if a city has wards, then I think there's an obligation, if they're true wards of the city, then there's an obligation to recognize them. They are recognized in the software. There's though doesn't mean that you can't lump them all together. That happened in Lebanon last time around. All 3 wards were put together into one ward. I mean, into one district, and that was due partly because of the difficulty. They're down in the corner of the county. They had kind of strange population numbers for their wards, and they kind of had to be all put together. It's also possible to, yeah, wards under the software, and just in redistricting in general, there's nothing that limits them in terms of what they can be combined with. So you can certainly combine them with towns outside, and that happened with Concord. I think Hopkinton and Ward, something else, were put into a district of its own. Floaterials can go also encompass.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Joel, for the presentation. I have 2 quick questions. I assume that the database is loaded with the census data. After the cities have done their redistricting, there will be new population numbers for the wards. Can those new population numbers then be added to your database to replace the census numbers?
Yeah.
And the second question, if I may. Joel, you mentioned that the software tries to ensure that when you're creating Floaterials that the territories are contiguous. Some years ago, there was a Floaterial created that included the town of Merrimack and the town of Litchfield, which geographically is contiguous, but there's no way from the people in Merrimack to get to Litchfield because there's no bridge and the Merrimack River separates the 2. Does your software take into consideration those natural boundaries or barriers when looking at adjoining communities to see if they're truly contiguous.
Truly contiguous would be a matter of definition, I think, Joel. I believe it does not. Is that correct?
That's right. In terms of highways or
That is
bodies of
not a
water,
function
that
of
type of
meeting
thing.
the standard for the government in this, the required federal standard as to population and representation. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay,
Okay, so you want to do a couple more in Sullivan County?
Sullivan County, sure. So here's gonna go to Charlestown, and so it's got a population of 5,114. So it can use a seat. So we're going to give it a seat, and then you'll see all these some smaller towns down in the southern tier, and none of them can have a seat of their own. So they're going to need to be combined together in order to have a sufficient population to deserve at least one seat. So I'm going to create another district of Langdon and Ackworth. We're going to join in. You'll see when you can join into a district, you're sometimes given an option as to which district you want to go into if the town is next to two districts. So Ackworth is next to Charlestown and also Langdon, so you get a choice by color. So we're going to stay with yellow here. I'm going to keep going with yellow and just keep combining these together. And so here you're at a point where we're up to a point where we've gone over the total population of this district is above the ideal population. So we could stop here and say, okay, we got it big enough. Okay, but then we're going to say, well, actually though, these is not within plus or minus 5%. So how are we going to settle that? Well, you form a floaterial if you can, of course. And so we could say, well, let's try to put the blue district together with the yellow district. So that's Charlestown. So we can create a float there. And then we're going to join in this other new district to that. And we can, then it shows you what the resulting deviations are. Well, if you look at the Charlestown number, it's negative 1% deviation. So that's fine. If you look at the yellow district, its deviation is negative 18.1%. Not so good. So that didn't work. Okay. So one way to fix that would be, you can see that there's a little bit, the yellow district is a little overrepresented. So if we put some more people into that yellow district, perhaps the float will work. So what I'm going to do is just add, I'm going to delete this floaterial for now, and I'm going to add in Goshen to increase the population a little bit. And so now it's a higher population. And so now if I make a float out of these two, the deviation works out at this point. 2% for the blue region or purplish region, and negative 4% for the yellow. So it succeeded. That's good. So it's a good thing, because this is what the map was last time around. So, if it didn't work out, we were in big trouble here. Now, okay, so then you go on to, you could say, okay, we could make Newport into a district, and then Unity, well, Unity has to go in with something. Okay, so we would put Unity, all these other districts are already filled up. They're already made into a float. The numbers work. So Unity can't go in with any of the areas in the float district. So it's going to have to be put into Newport. Okay, that's sort of the only option under this plan. It might be a little, some might say that's a little unfortunate, because Newport is given 2 seats here, and its deviation is negative 1%, which is great. It would be perfect just to give Newport 2 seats. But the problem is Unity has to go somewhere. Okay, so the only option is to add Unity to it. Okay, so we added it in, but the deviation now is 24.4%. So the trick now is to try to come up with a, put together some other regular districts that we can combine in with this newly created district so that our deviations work out. So as you can see, this is kind of tricky sort of stuff, a little bit. You have to think about it. Some people get good at it. I never did it very much myself. Mainly, I just kind of developed the tool and let other people do it. So I'm going to put Sunapee. Sunapee would be great to lead by itself too. It takes 1 seat just fine, but the problem is to make the numbers work. overall with the remaining limited number of towns to add to it, it just turns out it's going to have to go into a district also, into a multi-town district. So I'm going to add in Croydon to it. So, and then what I'm going to do, this is going to be a little tricky. If I try to just put these two together into a float, the deviation on both of them does not work out. You have the red is -6%, and the pink is -6% too. So it doesn't quite work. So we got to do something else. And the other option, and there are ways after you look at the numbers a little bit, you would know before doing that probably wouldn't work because of the deviations of the two underlying districts. They're at about 25%. They would need to be both at closer to 50% in order for that to work. So, what I'm going to do is form one more district with the remaining towns that are empty. Okay, and so here we have another district. This one here, actually, you can see that it's a fairly large district of 8,300 people. It can take 2 seats. I'm going to give it 2 seats. There you go. Now you'll see it still needs a little bit more. It's at 26% deviation. And I'm going to try to combine all these districts together into a float and see if it works. And it's supposed to work because it did before. So I'm going to create a float. I'm going to join to it. Join this one to that one. Here I have an option of which float I want to join. I have to decide which one it is. It's float 11. Okay, so all the deviations. The pink is at 3.7%. The red is at 4.5, and the blue is at 5.0. So it's right on the edge, but it makes it. So basically, we've succeeded with Sullivan County, and this is what occurred 10 years ago. So those are yeah, that will
Let me
appear also.
repeat that, Joel.
I'm
I
sorry, I
didn't press the thing down. Joel, could you explain what's on the left side of the screen as I'm looking at it? And will that appear on the thumb drive when we're using this program?
Right. Yeah, this will be part of what you'll have. It will appear on the left-hand side. So this is just a tabulation of all of what you see on the right-hand side of that, the map part, which is putting it in a tabular form. And so these are all of the. So look at the top area. It shows Ward 3. It's District 1, has 1 seat, and it shows what its deviation is, -1.7%. And then it does the same for Ward 1 and Ward 2. They're all separate districts. And then below that, you'll see Ward 1, 2, and 3 all on top of each other. And then it has a district number of 4. Put in an F4 so you can kind of keep track of what the floats are. And you'll see that there's no deviation for the float. Floats never have a deviation. And so that's just the tabular form. So that's a good way of just sort of keeping track of what you've done in a tabular format. And down below, it'll give you the total seats that are part of it, 13 in Sullivan, and then it gives you the deviation range of -4% to 5%, or 9% overall.
Representative Willen.
I'm wondering, you said that floats don't have a deviation. Could you just explain why that is?
If a float, kind of the basic idea is what you want to do in any area where people are voting is to they're in a particular. Let's say if you're in a district such as Ward 1 in Claremont, you have your own district, your own person you're voting for, and then you have the float person that you're voting for also. And so you're in a particular situation that's different from the person in the next ward over. Okay, And so what we're trying to do is figure out whether or not a person in each area, what kind of their voting strength is, what their voting weight is. Okay, if you do it on a floterial basis, you would maybe have 1% for everyone for that whole area. And that's more like that, and that might be adding all the numbers together, right, between all of the underlying districts. But you would, the New Hampshire Supreme Court said if you do that type of thing, you're basically masking what the true deviation is, because everyone's not in the same situation. Within that whole floterial, everyone has its own individual war too that they're voting in, and their populations may be different. I don't know if that's a good enough explanation.
No, it's great. Great explanation. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions for Joel? Representative Smith?
Thank you, Joel. This has been very, very helpful. Is it in any way possible to make things more complicated rather than less by taking a look at other factors in addition to those that you have in here now? For example, do all those towns, are they in the same school district? Or have you split up school district representation?
I think I'll answer that, Representative Smith. The requirement is as to numbers. In the final analysis, that is the first thing that needs to be determined. So just like the geography, this is a math exercise, and I understand that you were on the committee you have some experience with actually cranking the numbers. So this is an attempt to avoid the cranking of the numbers. I think that's sort of where we're at, is a math exercise. Is that
Yeah.
correct, Joel?
Yeah, I mean, that's there isn't any other data in here except just for the population numbers. I mean, so this tool is just designed to answer the one question. Basically, does it comply with the one person, one vote requirement of the federal constitution?
Could I
And that,
follow?
but those things can be considered certainly when you're looking at various maps and maps that make sense and comply with the deviation requirement. Then you could say, well, does it really make sense to put this town together with that town? They're separate school districts. There's no road between them. I mean, you can consider those things at that point. And then maybe that may be why you choose one map over another.
Correct. And if, for example, you might find that while on the map itself, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but if there's a highway that connects them, it makes sense for a particular district. Representative O'Hara, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that the school district thing would be a little bit of an issue in our county because one of our towns share a school district with a different county, Northfield, Milton.
Well, thank you. And I will tell you, I come from Goffstown, which I have seen school districts change as to who is part of it, certainly over the course of 10 years. And at least as far as I know, we've managed to keep our town boundaries somewhat consistent. Representative Ross, Representative Barry, did I see your hand up? No. Anybody else? Representative Wilmer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to ask the question, but I'm curious what all is on the thumb drive.
Right, okay, so I sort of wanted to get through the questions
Sure.
as to and Joel, can you just humor my non-technological self and tell me how it is I move those little boxes of data around? You just hit them with the cursor and move them?
Yeah, just the cursor. Just you put the little pointer on the label, the cursor on the label, and click.
And you can move it, okay.
And you can move it moves at that point. So you can even, if you mix up your labels and if I had Sunapee here, I'm just gonna leave. And somehow or another I got the label way off, and I mixed up. Well, where's whereas the Sunapee label is up here. And I forget which one Sunapee, you say, I can just click on the Sunapee label and create a district, and I say, oh, it's there. So it's always tied to the area, the label is.
So other questions on the software? Representative Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this software available to the general public to use?
Representative Porter, we're about to go through that in regards to an end license agreement. The answer is no. Thank you. Any other questions in regards to the software? Representative Kennedy.
What is the best software for us to use to open up this, Madam Chair?
We're gonna go through how to open it up.
Okay.
All right, so you all have a thumb drive. And as Representative Bergeron pointed out, there is going to be data that changes specifically in regards to city wards, because that would not, that will be something we are dealing with locally. So you will be getting updates, and it's my understanding that there might be some technical glitches in this data. Remember, this data was just released less than 2 weeks ago. Joel has been downloading it and try to make sure that the programming matches all of the data. So Joel is going to go through how to use this on your own computer, and
Okay.
what, if anything, might not be exactly right at the current time that we will need updated thumb drives for. Joel.
Okay. Madam Chair, would it be okay? There were a couple other things I wanted to cover on the.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Is that-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, and then I can get back to the
Okay.
thumb drives. I just wanted to go through quickly that once you have a plan put together for, say, a county, there's options at the top where you can save and open a county, so you can save your work. So I'm going to just save the county, and then it just brings up an area where you can just save your plan, and so I'm just going to call this Sullivan. And so now it's saved. That county is saved. If I go on to another county, I'm just going to go to Merrimack. One thing that I wanted a couple things I just wanted to show here in terms of Merrimack. It could be any county. I'm just going to Merrimack. That there's a function in here called solutions. There's a label or a button that you can press called solutions, and what that is it brings it. There's a database behind each one of the counties that's precompiled that shows various potential maps for that county that comply with the 5%, 10% overall deviation requirement. And there's a separate program that's run ahead of time to create the database, and there's certain parameters that are used with the intent of creating maps that generally are smaller in size and in population, and which and are more numerous, to have more districts rather than fewer, which I think generally people have come to accept is probably a good idea. At least last time around 10 years ago, that was one of the guidelines of the committee. We want to create maps with as many districts as possible. So anyway, so there are these. So that's been done, and so I can just show that to you. If I press the solutions button for an empty map here in Merrimack, it's going to pop up a table that shows various potential maps for the county. And this doesn't mean that these are the only maps that are possible. Certainly other maps might be suitable. Doesn't mean that every map on here is a good map. Okay, but it's just an aid, a tool that members can use to explore what different maps might be.
Representative Willem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The solutions tab, is that just map out base districts or also Floaterials?
Floaterials, because that's the difficulty. You know, it's not so easy to put together maps because of those floaterials. And so, yeah, this has floaterials.
Representative Lane.
Thank you. Who developed those maps?
It's a piece of software that I developed because, and that was developed in during the last 10 years, since the last time this was done. And I just saw that, you know, there was an issue relative to, you know, the difficulty users have in making maps. It's not obvious necessarily how these districts go together. So I thought, well, you know, it's sort of a, as you can see, it's kind of a mathematical sort of process you have to go through. And so computers are good at that. They're good at doing iterations. And so this is basically a other software that you're seeing right now, but another piece of software that does these iterations on finding all the possible maps. So it's not, so it's for me. I mean, from the, you know, the software I wrote.
Other questions? Okay, Joel, did you have anything else before we go to the thumb draws?
I'm just going to click on one of these just to show you how the map works.
Okay.
I just, there are, just look at the table really quickly. It shows a few stats relative to each one of the maps. It's mean deviation, it's deviation range, constituents per seat, total seats fewer or shorted, district total, seat total, and you can sort these by whatever you want. Oh, okay. I have to do a new share here, sorry. Okay. All right, so there's the table there. And so I'm gonna sort it by deviation range. Just maybe you care about deviation range. You know, maybe that's the big thing, and you want one with the smallest deviation range. And so it's sorted now. That the one at the top has the lowest deviation range. I click on it, and it's filled in the map. So you can take a look at that map and decide what you think about it. Okay. Thought I need to reshare. I got it. Sorry. There we go. And so here's a map. You can take a look at it, see what you think. I'll just show you one other thing that it can do. There's a button up here to reset map. So I'm going to get rid of that map. Okay, so it just clears it out. And I can say, you know, maybe you're somebody who lives in New London, and you say, I want my New London to be on its own. Okay, but I don't care about the rest of the county. So show me a map that does that, or show me maps that do that. And so you click on solutions, and so this is a smaller table, but all of these will be ones where New London has its own district. Oh, you have to show. If I do this long enough, I'll figure it out. There's still quite a few of them here. So I'm just going to click on one, and there we go. There's a map. You could have sorted that other table if you wanted to, based on whatever your criteria is. Map again, right? Sorry. Okay, all right. So there you go. And there you see that New London is its own district. So I have no idea. You'd have to take a look at this map, see if you like it. You can also not do just one district. You could complete it as much as you want, hit the solutions about it, and it'll show you any maps that it may have in the database. It may not show you anything. Maybe there's nothing. Who knows? Maybe you got yourself into a corner or whatever. Could happen. Or it's going to, yeah. So, but there's no promise that this will have every possible map in it. Okay, it's just an aid. You can ignore it if you want. It depends on you. And then the last thing would be, do you want me to, just so you know, you can kind of work on counties, county by county. So like I could, I'm going to just save this one and call it Merrimack. So that's saved also. And then you can save, once you get all your counties done, or maybe 2 counties, whatever you want, then you can save the whole plan. And that would be, this one apparently I called nothing much. I was just playing around. And so this is nothing much. And I'll save that one. So now we have both Merrimack saved and also what we were working on, Sullivan. So Sullivan is saved too. So if I come back in, I can open up both of those by opening the plan and they'll both pop up. So you can work on both the county level or the whole state level. So that is basically, I think, what I have to show. I guess, so we could move on to installation.
Yep.
Okay. And that software always gives you prompts whether or not you want to save a plan before you accidentally leave without saving your work. Okay, so the on your thumb drive, what I'm going to show you also, well, I guess if I'm running over.
Well, we need to go through this, Joel, so you get the floor.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to show you also how you can go about deleting the program from your computer.
Why don't we get to the installation first?
Okay, let's do that first.
I don't want to put the focus at the first on deletion. And if
yeah, I just want to.
if somebody's paying attention, I don't know, do you expect that we're looking at something on the screen or not? Because I'm not seeing anything on the screen. So sharing screen needs to happen again somehow. Yeah, we're back to the original screen setup.
Okay.
Whenever you closed out that program, we lost what was the connection, I think, to your screen. Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, so installation.
So there's so are you just seeing the whiteboard right now?
Just whiteboard.
Okay. Wanted to show the laptop here. I mean my the home screen. I don't want to show the whiteboard. Okay.
I think we need tech support back.
Hopefully. You just need a more talented operator here, that's all. Do I have to clear the right screen? Yeah. To,
I think from this demonstration, it's pretty clear that we're going to have to play around with the software and make multiple tries at maps before we can decide that anything is good enough to present to the public, because obviously there's going to be more than one way to do it.
Do I have tech support for them? Okay, so Joel, why don't we go through, we have thumb drives. What kind of computer system do we need to install it?
actually, you need a Windows computer. So that's the way it works now. That's not to say and I don't know what the plans are. I have a Windows computer, and so the packaging tool that I have, it makes it so that it creates an installation file for whatever computer that you use to create it. The installation file. So the installation file is made for Windows computers at this point. My understanding is if I did that on an Apple computer, then that installation file would work on an Apple computer. I haven't done that, or a Linux computer, say. That would be possible also.
Okay, and when we install it and go ask our computer to open this drive, what are we going to see?
You're going to see what's going to happen is when you put your thumb drive in your computer, you're going to see, I think you'll see 3 files on there. One file will be labeled read first, license agreement. So you should read that first. And that controls the software and in terms of use of that software. And then the 2 other files, one will be the House redistricting file, and it'll just be a file that is executable. So all you do is you click on it, double click on it, and it'll pop up, and it's an installer, and it's a Windows installer basically, and it will install the program on your computer, and it will put a shortcut on your desktop. And then to run the program, what you need to do is just click on that icon, and the program will come up. So it's very simple type of installation. You don't even have to answer any questions or whatever. It's an automatic install. That's the way it works.
And you said there were 3 files?
Yes, and the 3rd file is for doing congressional districts. So it's basically the same software, but there's a switch in there that you can turn it on so it's statewide. So that statewide switch has been turned on, and the deviation will be calculated based on 2 districts for the congressional one, because there are only 2 seats per congressional district. So and all you'll be doing with that software is creating 2 large districts. So I don't know who's doing that. I was just asked to put that together. And so it'll give you a deviation at the end, with that district label. You shouldn't use a Floaterial function with that because of the fact that, well, you don't have Floaterials and, in congressional districts but I was going to try to turn that off, but it was going to take a lot of playing with the guts of the computer, and it didn't want to do that, or didn't have the time to do that.
All right, so I think we're all set on what you're going to see when you put it in your computer. Representative Lane.
Is there a separate one for the executive counselors?
Not as yet. It would be the same thing as the congressional one, except you just need to change the number of seats. So I'm going to show my ignorance here. How many executive counselor seats are there in the state?
I'm not, the software
5.
that we have in the House retain the services of Joel for deal with what he just spoke of. As he said, there is an end user license agreement. Please read it. Normally we would you have to click that before you get to the program, but because we wanted you to get this information today, it is separate. So I am asking you to please read it, because this is a legislative work product. As Joel explained, this was something that he worked on 10 years ago and over the past 10 years, and it's the intellectual property of the general court. In regards to the maps themselves, you know that this committee has 6 bills. We had a public hearing on it and retained the 6 bills. And the Senate, as of this time, of course, has their own rules and hasn't done bills. But I can tell you that historically, the Senate has been given the opportunity to work on their district lines for its own body, as has this body. And I expect that going forward, under my chairmanship, we are going to honor that historical agreement where they will be working on their Senate lines to bring up the Executive Council. And we will, of course, that will be subject to our review, but that will be in their purview in the first instance as the House districts, which you have just seen, the software for will be in our in our purview. I am also expecting that the Senate will be taking on in the first instance, the proposals for the Executive Council. That is my expectation. As we all know, the Senate runs on its own timeline and we sort of wait to see what happens, but that's the expectation. And that means that our initial focus will be on, my expectation is, and that's how we're going forward, is the House and the congressional districts. There are also obviously two other bills in regards to the county commissioners and the state party delegates, which is a sort of a little nuanced one, but that in the first instance is how I expect this work to be going forward. As you can see, you're going to need plenty of time to play with the maps for the House districts. It's not quite as straightforward as people seem to think it is, especially due to the size of our districts and representation. It's very unusual, and it makes it, frankly, probably the most complicated mathematically task that we have in front of us. So we're going to be getting that. And is there anything on the disk right now that is not accurate or we shouldn't rely on?
No, I think everything on the disk, to the best of my knowledge, is accurate. You know, the census data is in there. The new numbers, I feel confident about those numbers. The main problem I was having with their 4 counties, there's no map database for them. So, you know, that solutions I showed you before, that does not work. It's Coas, Grafton, Rockingham, and Stratford, those 4. And that was just because takes a, part of it is it would take some computing power or time to run some of those. And in one of the counties, Stratford, there's some bug in the software that I'm not quite sure where it came from. So basically, so what you have, you'll be able to do mapping, your basic mapping for all of the counties. But if you try to do the solutions on Coas, Grafton, Rockingham, and Stratford, you won't get anything.
All right, just to repeat what Joel said, so that's clear. The solutions button, which is sort of unique, does not work for Coas, Rockingham, Stratford, and Grafton. You can still click on the county, you still do your maps, you just don't have the benefit of the programming to do one possible solution for those. So when you click on it and you don't get anything, it's not that your data is not working, it's not there. And frankly, you know, given I as chair am more concerned with making sure the census data is accurate, was tied to the communities, and then my focus will be on having him update for the ward information as it comes in, so we can do that and any other updates. But the solutions was a nice thing, but it's not critical to us getting our work done. And so I wanted you to get the data and the thumb drive today. Representative Lane.
To follow up on the other question I asked, I understand the Senate will take the first stab at the Congressional Executive Council on the other seats. Will we have the tools to double check and run those on our own if we so choose at that time?
I don't know, because the Senate has not made definitive plans at this point, and at this point, this is what we have with Joel.
Madam Chairman, I think Representative Lane said, the Senate, my understanding is not, you said the congressional district, Representative Lane, my understanding from what Madam Chairman just said is that we will start with, or current expectation is Is that what we would start with?
Correct. Representative Lane wants a program to redo what the Senate does, and at this point, the Senate has not made final plans. Okay. Thanks. When you don't know if you're not clear, you never know when you're clarified. So thank you. All right. Anything else on the programming? Representative Wilhelm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions. The first, I'm curious if data on race from the 2020 census is built into this software at all to be in compliance with the Voting Rights Act.
No, there's no race data in there.
Thank you. And the other question, if I may, is, you know, it's about your continued involvement in this, and really grateful for your service to the general clerk. Joel, I'm curious if you will be a resource to the committee as a nonpartisan, you know, expert in this to help us draw our maps.
Yeah, I'm most happy to talk with any member of the committee, you know, if you have any questions about the software. I'm not going to help you make a map at all, but in terms of being nonpartisan, I worked for the House Committee Research Office for 30 some years, and that was our role there, and I plan on continuing that. Yeah.
Other questions? Representative Smith.
Thanks. On the install, you put the thumb drive in. I wanted to get a little more granular. Is it a better practice to copy the files locally before installing?
Works both ways. I tried it both ways. I think you can do it straight from the thumb drive.
Okay.
Because it'll install the files on your computer. So
Whatever that meant. Anything else on the programming? So Joel has been retained by the Speaker's office in order to provide this service, since he is no longer employed by the General Court as a full-time employee. In regards to getting it, I think I will send out an email to committee members with specifics as to how to contact Joel in regards to questions when they come up. Because I probably email is going to be, we'll have to have email and phone calling. Joel is in the process of relocating and having some exciting things going on. So we want to make sure we don't abuse him either in regards to what time commitments he has made. And we'll get something firmed up for you. Representative Smith. I'm trying to get done with this before lunch. So if anybody has any questions and wants to actually see the map on your computer, I want everybody to understand it's got 2010 data. Joe will not be working on maps with 2020. He's maintaining a nonpartisan position and not getting involved in it. And I'm not sure who wanted that more, us or him. Are you able to stay for a little bit?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. All right. So what, if you could, why don't you stay and then after the meeting, if the committee members want to talk to you, they can. All right. Thank you. All right. Going back to our agenda, we had talked in our meeting in June, hard to believe it was almost 2 months ago now, adoption of standards for mapping, because part of what's going to happen in this process are public listening sessions in the various counties. I have decided that it would be helpful when we go to those county listening sessions, if it's very clear to people participating in those sessions that they understand what our parameters are. As you just saw, this is very much a math exercise. And the most basic component of it is the census data. We are required to use the census data. I will tell you, it is my preference that we make that clear, because I understand, but that there are different jurisdictions that are considering whether or not they are going to proceed with the census data without litigation because of some adjustments that the census did to the data. There is no basis, from what I can tell, for New Hampshire to do that. We have been told, Representative Smith and I had the opportunity, along with Representative Wilhelm, to attend a national conference when the census data was presented. People from the census data were there in regards to the fact that the numbers that were being presented were the numbers we were going to be using. And there is no leeway, I don't believe, in our Constitution or our work to do that. So it would be my preference that this committee adopt by motion that the 2020 census data numbers will in fact be those used for our work proceeding. Representative Turcott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do make a motion that the New Hampshire House Special Committee on Redistricting utilizes the population numbers provided in the 2021 U.S. Census data.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion? Not seeing any, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative Stephen Smith. Yes. Representative Carol McGuire. Anybody hear me? Representative McGuire, yes. Representative Turcott. Yes. Representative McDonald votes yes. Representative Kennedy. Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative O'Hara. Representative Sherman. Representative Marjorie Smith.
Yes.
Representative Bergeron. Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Piedra. Representative Porter.
Yes.
Representative Wilhelm.
Yes.
Representative Griffin.
Yes. Look at that. Unanimous. Here we go. All right. In regards to the specific tasks that we need to do, I think as we've all realized this morning, that the House is certainly of direct interest and one of the more difficult tasks to undertake. In our previous meeting, we discussed the requirements in the Constitution and in law, and we've discussed that a little this morning. Is there a motion in regards to what there should be the basic math criteria for the House districting? Representative McGuire.
Yes, I move that we make the House district such that county lines are not crossed and we follow the constitutional requirements that they be contiguous and do not vary from town or ward lines.
Is there a second? And did that include city and unincorporated places also?
Unincorporated places, yes. If we don't breach ward lines, we won't be breaching city lines.
Thank you. I will, and thank you for that clarification. There are some cities who have finally thrown up their hands in regards to wards and made it their ward the city line. So I'm
You're
not sure
correct,
going
Madam Chair. City
forward
lines
what
is
they're going to
fine.
be using. So we'll see. Representative Bergeron will tell us a little more about that. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
That's better. Okay. Representative Steve Smith. Yes. Representative McGuire.
Yes.
Representative Turcott. Yes. Representative McDonald votes yes. Representative Kennedy.
Yes.
Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative O'Hara.
Yes.
Representative Sherman. Representative Marjorie Smith.
Yes.
Representative Bergeron. Representative Lane. Representative Piedra. Representative Porter.
Yes.
Representative Wilhelm.
Yes.
Representative Griffin.
Yes.
Unanimous again.
Thank you, Representative McDonald. Thank you, members. I think that the groundwork is laid now for us to do our own mapping and to get going into the counties throughout the state to have our listening meetings with persons to find out what they want to hear. And I hope people have been able to see on YouTube. I understand the YouTube streaming was working, or at least hear that we have been getting your emails and letters in regards to wanting your own representative. If you have enough people in your community, we have, so the public is aware, we have been provided by staff a number of communications that have been received from the public over the past weeks in regards to positions that we should take. So we have those in hand. And we will be considering all of that as we go forward. Before I talk about those listening sessions, Representative Bergeron has agreed to update us on what's happening with the cities and how they are proceeding. And you should have in front of you. Do people
going
have it?
around
We're
right
passing
now.
it out now. I'm trying to convince Representative Bergeron that he does not have to do the printing at his own home, that we can do it at the staff here, but he wanted to make sure it got done. So thank you.
May I begin, Madam Chair?
Yes, Representative Bergeron, thank you. I
Thank you.
pretty much.
While those sheets are going around, I have mentioned this in the previous meeting, but since we have some replacements present, I want to repeat it. Census tracts are supposed to fall within or fall along voting district boundaries. And that happens, of course, in our towns because the town lines are the voting district boundaries. Sometimes, however, the census makes mistakes, and the census tracts do not necessarily follow ward boundaries. So the data that you have that's been uploaded from the census is probably correct in 99% of the instances, but we may have to keep our ears to the ground to see what's happening in the cities as they start overlaying the census data with their own ward lines on GIS. And the example I gave previously is what occurred in Nashua about 10 years ago, where the census treated the eastern boundary of one of our wards as Route 3, which is a major road north-south in southern New Hampshire, with where the actual ward boundary was the Daniel Webster Highway, a little to the east, which is the mall district of the city. And in between, about 1,100 people resided. So that meant, according to the census, there were 1,100 people less in one ward and 1,100 people more in the other. And so we had to make some adjustments to the census data by moving population blocks from one ward to the other in our calculations. So just something to keep in mind, that something like this in Manchester, but not to that degree, and it may occur in other cities as well. As for the table that I distributed, I think we optimistically hoped that the cities would all complete redistricting and stay within perhaps a 10% range of deviation during that process. It appears that that may not be as simple as we had hoped it would be, and may not occur in all the cities. So I would like to flag a couple of instances where we might need to keep in mind that this is not occurring or may not occur in time for our redistricting work. The first is the city of Franklin. The city of Franklin sent a letter to the committee asking that it be treated as a single legislative district. When I looked at the city charter online, there are footnotes whenever a charter is amended on the codifier's website. And the last time ward lines were amended in Franklin was 1995. So we also have a statement from them indicating that they do not expect to have the redistricting done prior to the time this committee's work is done. So we may have to consider treating Franklin as its city as a citywide district as part of any floaterials that occur. Another one to be concerned about is Claremont. I had been told by the city clerk that Claremont did not redistrict in 2011. And the reason they did not do so is in part because their legal counsel had advised them, since they had 9 councilors, 3 of whom were elected, one of each in each of the 3 wards, and the other 6 at large, that they didn't need to redistrict because a majority of their council was elected at large. Based on Joel's demonstration, it may also be true that the actual census numbers fell within that 10% range of deviation anyway, and perhaps there was no reason for them to redistrict. But at the present time, they don't have any committee appointed They don't have a plan yet to conduct any redistricting in Claremont, so I don't know what the actual numbers in the wards for Claremont will be, or if they'll have anything done prior to our work being completed. The third one I wanted to flag is Somersworth. Somersworth process for redoing their ward lines is done by referendum. A committee has to be appointed consisting of several council members. They need to come to agreement what the new ward lines would be, and then it has to be sent to the voters at, quote, the next election. That's unclear whether it's a special election or a regular election. I would assume a special election could be held, but we should assume nothing. And right now, no committee has yet been appointed in Somersworth, so we don't know what their plans are. The cities of Dover and Keene are trying to amend their charters at the November election to allow them to make changes to ward lines by ordinance. That would expedite the process if they can get these questions approved by the voters. The big concern with both cities is the timeline between now and the date when absentee ballots have to be ready for the November election. After there's been a public hearing on the new ward lines or on the new charter amendment, that has to be submitted to the Department of Revenue Administration, the Secretary of State's office, and the Attorney General's office for approval. And usually they have up to 60 days to either approve or reject the request to amend the charter. So it's going to be critical that those three state agencies react quickly to the requests of these two cities and approve that charter amendment so they can get it on the ballot. The other cities have pretty much laid out their plans. Portsmouth has to do it by change to state law. We need to still talk to the Portsmouth officials to find out how that's going to happen. During our last meeting, the chair had submitted a copy to us of Portsmouth ward lines that was done as a session law in 2012. And so they need to, I assume they're going to need to file a bill requesting that the ward lines be changed, or it's going to have to be an amendment to one of our redistricting bills to make sure that it's done.
It's our bill.
It's our bill, okay. One way or the other, Portsmouth needs to get to work and define those ward lines, and we need to make sure that it becomes part of state law. And with that, I guess I could try to answer any questions people might have, but I think I highlighted those areas of concern or interest that I thought the committee might like to know more about.
So we know the timeline is going to be tight for cities. We need to proceed regardless. Our goal remains to report out November 18th. We do know, of course, that isn't the end of the bill review process. It needs to go to our full body and to the Senate. So to the extent certain things might be figured out after that point in time, there is an amendment process under rules in both houses. But obviously the preference would be not to have to do that. So to the extent we're going to be able to figure that out, the better. And I want to thank Representative Bergeron and Representative Lane is helping him out on doing this work. Questions for Representative Bergeron? I'm not seeing it. Thank you. The review, I have put on the review of county listening session locations, and I have this on here because Lindsay and I have begun calling the places that were used 10 years ago. And I want to get some committee input in regards to locations as to their feasibility. You will note that a number of the locations that were used last time were nursing homes. I'm going to assume in the first instance that nursing homes are not going to be available for public meetings. So that means that even if all of these are still available and some were not available to be booked until the actual calendar month of September, which is why you don't have a schedule in front of you, I want to go through each county, and I'm going to open it up to representatives to see if they have any suggestions for other locations. Representative Smith.
I have a threshold question, Madam Chair. Can you tell me the difference between a public hearing where we receive information from the public understand, working from the bills that we have already filed and a listening session.
My view, and you can see I apparently have a different view than they had 10 years ago, is that public hearings are a legislative process associated with a specific bill for which we open hearing. I do not intend to conduct these opening up a public hearing on specific bills. We can do it that way. We've already had that public hearing when we retained the bills. So I'm just referring to these as a listening session. Additionally, I want to make it clear that it is not necessary for the full committee to be at these. Historically, because they are around the state, what happens is at least, I think it was 5 members of the committee attended, and one person would be designated the chair for that session, and someone else would be there to serve as a clerk or to help us get the feedback from people at the session. So I have simply phrased it that way because I'm not going to conduct it as an open, closed public hearing. Follow up.
Thank you. As a hearing, there is no obligation for us to have a full quorum.
I'm aware of
It's
that.
only when it's an executive session, and the last thing we're going to be doing is voting. But in terms of public perception, it seems to me that we want to be clear to the public that we take what they say seriously, we're listening carefully, and the usual nomenclature would be a hearing. A listening session is somewhat less specific, and I would hope you would consider that and suggest referring to these as public hearings.
Thank you. Although we know we're always listening. Representative Sherman.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you. All right. Thank you for that clarification. I in no way intended to create a record that indicated we weren't doing exactly the same thing. Representative Wilhelm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we intend to have any public hearings after maps are drawn? I understand these public listening sessions to be before maps are drawn. Will there be an opportunity for the public to review maps and share their feedback after the maps are drawn?
Yes. Representative Porter. Didn't I see your hand?
Yes, you did. I don't need to.
No. We have created a website that will allow comment to be submitted to the committee along with maps to be uploaded so that people can provide maps. Part of the remote access to public meetings is also due to our geography and technical limitations. There are some portions of the state where providing that really is not providing anything. And it is not clear to me where we're going to be providing these services, given what I see as more limitations on locations to have these than we had 10 years ago. Representative Lane.
Beat on a dead horse, but most of these, I know in Merrimack, if we have it, most of the county, my understanding, the county commission hearings are available. So if we use those facilities, we should be able to have them access.
Well, again, there is a difference between live streaming and access. So I'm not sure what you're talking about in regards to that, because it is not the intent to take comment remotely, certainly, but there is nothing that would prevent anybody from filming what is a public meeting. And I know that all counties do not have that, because I know that in Hillsborough, I contacted the Hillsborough County in regards to whether or not we would be able to use their room, and there are no such capabilities. Their county commissioners are actually meeting tomorrow, and they're going to take up the request. Representative Lane.
So for those that do have the ability for streaming, watch, could we do that?
We'll look into it, but it's not clear to me that I think that going down a path where we're providing different services in different counties makes sense. I don't know. Frankly, I'd like to get the locations in a calendar set up before we deal with that, because I think we have a timeline. And again, there was work done to make sure that we had a website that was accessible with the ability of the public to make comment and upload maps for our consideration. And I know all of us will be reviewing all those maps, and we're making sure that staff make sure that we have in hand the comments that we are receiving, so it's part of the public record. Representative Turcott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hate to go back onto the distribution of the thumb drives, but just so I'm clear, and I think everybody else is crystal clear regarding the end user license agreement, the fact that they're in that agreement, there's no place for signatures or anything like that. Is it my understanding that the fact that we utilize that software, we are agreeing to the end user license agreement?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you for those comments, everyone. All right, Belknap. Do we have anybody here who's from Belknap County or familiar with it? Representative O'Hara. So apparently they used Belknap Mill last time. Is that
Yeah, I think that'd be the best place. It's the most open area. There's no Zoom option there, but it's the most open for getting those people in.
okay? Carol, that was a nursing home. I am not even going to waste the phone call to the Carroll County Nursing Home. Actually, I think Lindsay did call. Does anybody know of any space in Carroll County that might be appropriate? Representative Wilhelm.
As a proud staff alum of Camp Calumet on Lake Ossipee, they've got some really great facilities there, and I'm sure they'd be excited to host a civic listening session, public listening session such as this.
All right, well, I hate to do this because now this is warning to all of you. Given your respective knowledge of these locations, Representative O'Hara and Representative Vaughan, would you mind calling them and sending me an email as to what you might find out as to their availability for a meeting?
It would be my pleasure, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Will do.
We want to do these and I would like to get these done by mid-October. And I would prefer that they be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday nights. And the other thing that you need to be aware of is some of these places are going to have a fee, and they will have insurance requirements, some of them. And I have been in contact with the speaker's office in regards to trying to figure out what we have for a budget and insurance. And it's my understanding we can deal with the insurance piece. And there is a small budget. Hopefully people will see this, organizations will see this as a civic event and be forgiving on our fee. Cheshire County. Anybody here familiar with Cheshire County? There's the Keene Public Library. Is that a pretty good place? Representative Smith.
The library is a great room and the parking is non-existent. So I'm trying to find another spot.
I was going to suggest that Representative Weber, resident of Cheshire County, might be a good person to ask.
What about Keene State? Okay.
cooperative.
Madam Chair, if, okay.
I agree with Representative Porter. Could we look at St. Anselm's Institute of Politics? It's actually in your town, Madam Chairman, Goffstown is more centrally located. I'm happy to call them. It's a long drive to Nashville. If you live in Peterborough, it's a long drive.
Thank you. As we make these calls, I would just remind people to ask about the accessibility of the places to make sure that they are handicapped and otherwise accessible.
Merrimack was in the Merrimack County Admin Building. I'm not sure. Representative McGuire.
Yes, that room is still available, but the county delegation has been meeting in one of the courtrooms in the old courthouse, which is now available, and I can check with the county commissioners.
If you
It is
could,
handicapped
if you could
accessible.
do that, my recollection from being in the courtroom for work is that the old county courthouse is not that friendly for access, and Representative Lane appears to be agreeing with me.
There is actually an elevator that the last time. I
My
was there
recollection of
worked.
that elevator is that it would be over by the time you made it to the second floor. I never took that elevator. I just went right for the stairs, which were beautiful, which are a beautiful staircase, but that elevator was severely lacking, and I can't imagine they updated it, given that they just built a new building. Rockingham. This was at the nursing home. I'm not sure what other facilities are available on the county compound there. Anybody know anything about Rockingham? All right, we'll have.
I believe, what about the Pinkerton Academy? They have a very nice spread out auditorium. I believe it's the performing, which is the name of the Performing Arts Center. There's a special name for it.
Stockbridge.
Stockbridge.
All right, we'll look there. I think, is Pinkerton more central? The Rockingham County complex is not that easy to get. I mean, it's road-wise, it's okay, but it's sort of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I mean, it's Rockingham's population split between east and west, so you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Okay. Stratford, now the Stratford Superior Court is definitely out in the middle of nowhere. Representative Turcott.
I can make the contact on that one and arrange the time. I'm sure that will be available.
All right, is there anything else in Stratford that's available? That is a heck of a place to get to.
I don't think so. I mean, it's an ideal spot. We use it for
Okay,
great access. I know it's a little kind of down some
there's a
winding roads.
couple little
It's a
turns you
it's
have
a
to
great
make to
spot,
get there
though.
that are a little tricky,
They'll
but
give us one of their courtrooms.
A careful map will get everybody there, and it really is the most central place. And if you get confused, you'll end up either at the jail or the nursing home, so there's no problem.
all right, okay. And then Sullivan. Representative Smith.
Yep, Sugar River Valley Technical Center has 2 potential spots we could use. Both are decent sized rooms, lots of parking. If you tell me which weeks, and it's a Tuesday or a Thursday, I can make the deal.
Where is it?
Those are in Claremont.
Okay. All right, so what I'd like to happen over the next week is that we try to firm the locations and the schedule up. As soon as anything is established, we will post it on the website. And once they are established, we will need committee members to essentially sign up. Representative Bergeron, I'm sorry, I went to my left and I didn't come back to you. I apologize to you.
That's all right, Madam Chair. I actually agree with Representative Porter that a more central location in Hillsborough County actually makes sense.
Coming from Nashua, thank you very much.
This way I don't have to make a phone call.
Representative Lane. Thank you. Just for clarification, are we asking them for one date or for two? So the one, not for the one after the maps are drawn?
No, because we haven't decided how we're doing it after the maps are drawn. This is very focused on a county. Representative Turcott.
And just for clarification, the dates that you put down here are not set in stone, whatever kind of.
No.
Tuesday,
These are
Wednesday.
dates from 10 years ago. There are no dates.
Oh, okay.
So it's just Tuesday.
Gotcha.
You know, like there might be a use of it every Thursday night, so we can only use that place Tuesday or Wednesday. Hold on to that. Representative Wilhelm.
When do you anticipate a plan for post-map hearings?
I do not. I have no anticipation at this time for post-map events.
But we will have some sort of
There
public
will be
hearing.
some sort of a public hearing on maps once they are done. Representative Smith asked when would like this to begin. And given the start of school and Labor Day being the 6th, the earliest week that I would think that this could begin would be the week of September 13th. Correct.
And is earlier better than later?
I have no opinion on, as to that, because I think that the earlier it is, the more we will begin examining maps in public. Given the November deadline, I think it would be nice for us to start talking about maps, actual maps here, certainly a month before that, right? So that puts us to mid-October, which means we really sort of want to get these loaded into September and the first part of October. And as we noted, the November 18th date is what we are shooting for. There is the ability to request the body of the House to waive the rules to report out later. But I can barely control a committee of 15. I think I'd rather just be able to go without trying to ask for a waiver of the rules. Exactly. Let it be noted that today there was a meeting of the Special Committee on Redistricting in the House of Representatives, and we were unanimous. That is all I had on my agenda for business today. You will be getting emails in regards to where we stand on scheduling. They will be posted on the website. The next meeting of this committee will be at the call of the chair after we have gone through this. Joel is available. He's still here. If you want to talk to him directly about the maps and try a few clicks yourself, if he allows people to use his computer, you can at least ask him to do that. Again, Joel is here as a part-time employee retained by the Speaker's Office and the General Court. He is nonpartisan and he will not be doing maps for you. Representative Barry, did you have your hand up? Any other questions? Seeing none, I take a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Sometimes it's nice to just do those votes without having to do the roll call, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming.